Welcome to this module of Professor Messer's free CompTIA A+ certification training course on optimizing the Windows operating system. I'm James Messer, and in this module, we're going to talk about these different pieces of 220-601, our Essentials exam, and our 220-602 exam. And notice the text between those two exam requirements is almost identical. We need to know how to install, configure, optimize, and upgrade operating systems, specifically know the procedures and utilities that we can use to optimize the operating system. And when you get into working with operating systems and tweaking them and making them run faster and better, these are great tools and utilities that you can use. We're going to talk about diagnosing performance problems using Task Manager and Performance Manager, and then we'll also talk about some best practices relating to virtual memory, hard drives, temporary files, services, the startup process, and applications that might be running on your system. And this is a great way to go through your Windows XP or Windows 2000 operating system and look to see if it's running as best as it could be using some of these best practices. Let's start with diagnosing performance problems. Whenever we get a call on the phone and our help desk, it says, "My system is slow." We need to know more about why somebody's having problems running with their system. And one of the first places you can get really great real-time system statistics is from Task Manager. This is a great place you can go and look at CPU, you can look at memory, you can view disk accesses, and get a feel for what's going on your system. You can also see if there is something unusual going on with spikes in CPU utilization, how much memory is currently in use. Let's step through a bit of that. And the way that we get to Task Manager is we can start it by hitting Control-Alt-Delete, and that brings up a separate menu that allows you then to start Task Manager, or we can right mouse click in the taskbar and choose Task Manager. Let's do some of that. Here's my Windows XP desktop, and to start the Task Manager, I'm going to right mouse click anywhere in my taskbar across the bottom, and I'm going to choose the option for Task Manager. It pops up my Task Manager screen, and the one that I have coming up by default is my Processes tab. There's a number of other tabs here: the Applications tab, Processes, Performance, Networking, and another one where we can see whatever users might be connected to our machine. Now, the one where you can notice there's a lot of empty spaces on the Applications tab. There's no applications running on our system right now. So let's start one up. Let's go to our Programs, Accessories, and we'll choose our Notepad. And we'll bring it over here, make it so that we can actually see it on the screen at the same time. There's our Notepad, and you can see that it's currently running. So every time we start an application, it'll pop up on this screen. This gives us a lot of control of what's going on. If we wanted to suddenly stop Notepad, if it was the status, for instance, was saying that it was not responding, we could always change it by clicking on the task and choosing End Task. And notice Notepad just disappears. It's gone completely. There was no questions there. There was no comments about it. We clicked End Task and it was gone. So make sure that if you're using the Task Manager to stop some of these problematic programs that might be hung up, keep in mind you could be also losing data. When they close, they are gone. There's no way to get that back now. You'll see under the Processes tab, there's a lot of things going on the desktop right now, a lot of different processes that are happening. Some of them are specific to VMware, some is the Explorer that we're using right now, other services. There are some applications running that do my antivirus that you can see in the taskbar down at the bottom. So that a lot of these processes that normally go unseen, we can now see in the Task Manager. You can see who started this process, the username, whether it was a system or a user that logged on that did it, what the CPU utilization is for that process, and we can also see how much memory each one of them is using. This can come in handy if somebody's suffering from performance problems. You'd like to see what application is really using the most amount of memory. We can even click this column and it will sort them in ascending or descending order, and we can see which ones happen to be using the most amount of memory. There are other statistics that we can get in real time as well. If we view and we choose Select Columns, look at all of the different options that you have available to use in some of these columns. One that I like to always have available is the memory usage delta. I also like to be able to see some of the traffic that's going through with some of the I/O reads and the I/O writes. And if you click OK, you'll see that we can expand out our view now to view what some of those might be. And notice the memory delta is nice because a number that is positive or going up, we'll see that it changes. We can see a number going down. It's in parentheses as a negative number. So it gives us a feel on what's happening right now with these applications. what happens to be going on. It gives you more of a feel for what's going on there. So developers use this a lot when they're trying to troubleshoot, but we can also see when applications are reading, when they're writing, when there's differences in how much memory they're using. It's a great way to go in and look at what is the performance right now for these apps. We also have a performance tab that tells us how much of the CPU we happen to be using, how much page file usage history we have. Very useful when we're trying to determine how we should set up our swap file or our page file on our system. Then a number of statistics at the bottom, which tell us about handles, threads, processes. The important one that you'll want to see when you're interested in knowing should I upgrade memory in my machine is this physical memory option. We can see how much memory is currently installed in this machine. We can also see how much is available. So if that number happens to be getting very low, we may decide that we need to change the way we're using memory, how many applications we're using, or maybe we need to upgrade the physical amount of memory available in the system. We can also look at how much memory the kernel's using. So some of these statistics and this information, very useful when you get on the phone with tech support, but you can also do more research into each one of these individual statistics. We'll tell you more about how you can use those stats to help optimize your system. Now, we've looked at real-time statistics with the Task Manager, but we can also get a number of these statistics over long periods of time with something called the Performance Manager. We can get to the Performance Manager from our Control Panel, Administrative Tools, and Performance. And we can see when we go into that view exactly what's happening over a long period of time. Here's our Windows XP desktop. Let's start Performance Manager. It's in the Control Panel. So we get there from our Start menu under Settings for Control Panel. And the option that we'd like to choose is Administrative Tools. And inside the Administrative Tools, there is a Performance option. We double-click Performance, and it launches our Performance Manager. Now, there are a number of statistics that come in by default in our Performance Manager. You can see it's drawing a line for us. Every second it's updating itself, and it's creating a graph of what's going on in our system right now. And the System Monitor view is the default view that comes up, and we can look in this graph in a number of different ways. If we'd like to view it as a histogram, we can view it that way. If we'd like to view it in report view, we've got a report, more text-based view of what's going on, or back to our rolling graph view in this configuration. Each statistic that we choose is given a different color and a different counter at the bottom of the screen. If we'd like to add another counter, we can right mouse click anywhere in here and choose to add a counter. And you'll see a wealth of statistics pop up here, a number of different performance objects that you can choose from. For instance, if you want to see about memory, look at all the different memory statistics that you can look at over time. So you could really go through quite an extensive set of performance counters and tracking of performance information over time. This is great. You could set it up on someone's machine, start it running, and then go away. And an hour later, come back as they've performed their normal tasks during this time frame and look and go back in time to see what has happened on the system. Was there a lot of disk access? How much memory utilization did you have? How much CPU utilization took place during that time frame? And start understanding more about what's happening rather than sitting down right then and trying to watch what somebody's doing and trying to catch all of these statistics. There's no way to do that all at the same time. Performance Manager is a great tool to have available to be able to do that for you automatically. When we're ready to start optimizing our system, one place that we can start is virtual memory. Now, virtual memory is this temporary file location where applications that aren't currently in use are swapped out to the hard drive so they can sit there while our physical memory is used to perform other functions. Really is making more room for your physical memory and other applications to run, and you're essentially are creating more memory in your system. It just so happens that some of it's over on the hard drive. Now, because it's being stored on the hard drive, anything that is swapped out to this virtual memory setting, we can't perform any calculations on. So if we ever need to pull information back in to perform calculations using that information that we swapped out, it has to come off of disk and back into physical memory. But because we can swap those things out temporarily, it makes our Windows run a lot more efficiently because there's more physical memory available to use. Now, a lot of this all happens in the background. You never really see the swapping in and out of your disk. You'll see your disk light will come on and off a lot, but you don't really see it happening on the screen. Occasionally, you may see a delay if you happen to be bringing an application back up that you've minimized. There may be a short delay as it begins pulling some of the information off disk that it's swapped out because it knew you weren't using that application. You minimized that app. Then it took a few of those pieces of the application and put them off on the hard drive. When you went back to the application, it realized, oh, you need to see it again. Let me pull that off the disk. And that might take a little bit of a hit. You'll see a little bit of a delay there, but usually it's not very much. But that may explain why you see a small delay whenever you start maximizing some of those applications, especially if you have a lot of things happening on your system and there's a lot of virtual memory in use. For virtual memory, some of your best practices is that you have at least some amount of virtual memory. The total amount that you need to have available really depends on how you use applications and if those applications can take advantage of that virtual memory. Now, we monitor virtual memory use. We can do that in the Task Manager itself, or we can do it in Performance Manager. We saw in the Task Manager that we've got these memory that we've paged out, that virtual memory view that we've paged out to. And Performance Manager will also look at how much of the virtual memory we've been using over time. So two great places to go in real time and over long periods to see how the virtual memory is being used in your system. If you're running out of virtual memory, Windows will give you a message. We can also go back into our statistics that we've gathered and adjust how much of that hard drive space we're using for virtual memory. These days, hard drives are very big, so generally people have very large virtual memory, 1, 2, 3 gigabytes of virtual memory in their system. So it's up to you and how your applications are being used as to how much of that disk space that we would like to allocate just for virtual memory. When it comes to optimizing hard drive use, first thing we're usually looking for is problems. We're not usually looking for any particular type of performance issue, because if a hard drive is having problems reading or writing information, there's going to be a delay as it retries and retries and retries to get the data. And as a drive starts going bad, it may not make a noise. It may not just completely go out. It may have a certain spot of the drive that's having a problem reading or writing information. So a lot of the problems that we can look at is doing error checking. You can get to the error checking view in the disk properties under the Tools tab. And that's in our Windows XP desktop. Let me show that to you. We'll maximize our screen here. In the Windows XP desktop, we can get to that if we click on My Computer or go to any screen that shows a drive. If we right mouse click on a disk and choose Properties, on the Tools tab, there's an option for error checking that will check the volume, not just for logical errors where files might be located, but it can also perform a physical check of the drive itself, a sector by sector drive check. So it can make sure that it can read and write to every sector on that hard drive. So that's a good first place to start whenever you're trying to optimize hard drive. Another place you can start optimizing the hard drive is in the efficient reading and writing function. Whenever you start using a disk, what you'll find is that as files are written out, the files may be split apart. And whenever you need to retrieve the file, the disk now has to go to different places to be able to retrieve that file. Wouldn't it be much easier if the file was all in one location, all in order, so that whenever you're ready to read the file, the drive just simply read it all at once and didn't have to move around the drive? It's much more efficient. So that's something called defragmentation. It takes all these fragmented pieces and creates contiguous files so that they're all in order. They're all from beginning to end, all in one place on the drive. And you'd be surprised how efficient your system becomes when you start making sure that it's defragmented. You can get to the defragmentation section in that same place under the disk properties in the Tools tab. There's another option for defragmenting the drive, and it's in this defragmentation section. You can click a button, it will run through that defragmentation right away so that your drive is now defragmented. Very easy to do, built into your Windows operating system. There are also a number of third-party tools available if you want to do something like that. That's a very simple way to go about defragmenting and getting things up and running. And finally, when you're looking at your hard drives and being able to optimize the efficiency of the hard drive use, you can clean it up. If you use your drive a lot, you write a lot of big files out, you do a lot of video editing, you're saving files, you're saving videos, you're saving music, and then maybe you don't use them anymore. You might put them into your garbage and your trash bin on your computer, and you may find that even though they're in the trash, they're still taking up hard drive space. So one of the things you can do is run disk cleanup. This is from your Start menu under All Programs, Accessories, System Tools, and Disk Cleanup. You can clean up the disk drive so that it clears out a lot of these things that are temporary files or files that you might not use anymore. Let's look at mine. Under my Start menu, under Programs, Accessories, I go to my system tools, and there is a disk cleanup right there. Disk cleanup calculates how much space it could possibly free up on drive C, and it starts looking at what I have in my downloaded program files, in my temporary internet files, web pages that might be offline, recycle bins, setup log files, temporary files. Look at all these different files that are out on my system that I'm not using. Some are old, they're compressed, they're log files, they're temporary files from Windows. I could free up about 6 megabytes of hard drive space by selecting all of these categories and simply removing them. The two that are here by default are downloaded program files and temporary internet files. Very easy place to start doing that. I can click OK, and it says, are you sure you want to perform these actions? Absolutely. It cleans up those temporary internet files, and now I have more disk space available. So you don't have to worry about finding the temporary file selection area on your hard drive, rummaging through old files and temporary files, deleting things and not quite sure that you're deleting the right things or enough of them. You can have the disk cleanup process do that for you automatically. We just talked about temporary files, but temporary files aren't just created by the operating system. Certainly, the Windows creates a lot of temporary files when it uses it, and we've already seen how disk cleanup can get rid of some of those. But applications themselves also create temporary files. Browsers, word processors, spreadsheets, video editors, audio editors, almost every application you use has some type of temporary file that it creates. So being able to go in and to the operating system or the application and tell the application, clear out all your temporary files, or tell me where you keep your temporary files because I'm going to go into that directory and delete files, that's another great place to go to start freeing up disk space on your system. Another great place to start optimizing the way that your operating system runs is in your services view. When you start really getting into services and understanding what's going on in your system, you can really do a lot. So it's important that you really master the services aspect of Windows. These services can also reveal dependencies between different applications. Some applications require that other applications are running at the same time for them to work. You may not even realize it. When you start one program, there may be 3 or 4 other programs or services that start up behind the scenes just so that one program can work. So having this services view and understanding what's going on can give you more insight into how much memory, utilization, CPU that you're going to require on your system. Whenever you're looking at the startup process, that's really when a lot of services are starting up for the very first time, and things really start to slow down. People really start complaining about how long it takes to start up their machine. A lot of this can be found inside the services view. There's also, when you are troubleshooting a startup process itself, your operating system can't start at all, you can control services from the command line whenever you're in the recovery console. So it's also nice to be able to understand what services are good and what services are bad and be able to control that from there. You can get to the services in your control panel under Administrative Tools or Services. You can also get to it through your Management console. So 2 ways to do that. Let me show you how to do that. We talked about getting to your services from the Start menu under Settings, under Control Panel, and you have Administrative Tools, and under there is a selection for Services. And that will start up the Windows Services view that lists out all the different services on your machine. I told you another way to do that is from My Computer, you can right mouse click and choose Manage, bring up your Windows Management console, and there's an option in here for Services and Applications. And there's your Services option within there. So it takes you to the same screen with the same information, but now you can see there's a lot of information. This is where all of your services are. And you can see there's a few columns that are important for you to keep in mind. One is the name of the service itself. There's usually a description associated with the service. If there is not a description associated with the service, as I scroll down, there's a few of these that might not be. You need to look at those and make sure that those should be on your system, that they should be used. Often a service that is not programmed well or one that you weren't expecting to show up on your system is one that doesn't have a description associated with it. We can also see the status of the service. Has it been started? Has it been stopped? It's all listed there. We can see what it's designed to do when you start up your machine. When the system starts, this service for automatic updates is set up to start automatically, and indeed it did start properly. So you can get a lot of information from the services view. If I right mouse click on any of these, I can stop my service from here, I can restart it, or I can choose properties where I can do a lot of this also from here. There's a number of tabs under properties where I can look at how the service is logging on, what the recovery options are if the service fails, what should it do. This is very useful if you have a service that for some reason it always fails the first time when you boot up your machine. You can tell it, as soon as you fail, I know you're a bad service, you're just poorly programmed, and that's okay. We're going to have you, when you first fail, go ahead and restart yourself. I used to have a print spooler that did this very same thing. It was a very bad print spooler that didn't work with the rest of my operating system. There's some problem with the printer I was using. And so I told it, the print spooler, whenever you start it up, in fact, let's find the print spooler. I just went down into here. Here's my print spooler, and this is what loads my files into memory before it starts printing them. And my print driver would always make this print spooler crash. So I went into the properties and I said, if you ever crash, just restart. And that's the default you'll notice for Windows. It says it does this twice. And if it fails twice, just forget about it. Don't even do anything after that point. We know there's a problem we can't recover from. Very smart thing to do with the print spooler, and obviously it's something that happens a lot because now it's the default for Microsoft Windows to automatically restart the print spooler should there be any problems, so your printers will always continue to work. Whenever you're starting up your machine, you'll notice it takes a bit of time to finally get your machine to a point where you can start working with it. Sometimes it takes forever to get things going. Some older machines, they've been around for a while. They've got a lot of applications that start up all at the same time. There are a couple of places you can go to see what's going on whenever your machine starts up. One is to look at your startup group. There's usually not a lot in here, but it may give you an idea of what some applications are starting up. Anything that's in this startup group starts automatically when your machine begins. We've already seen the services that start automatically. These are the applications that start automatically. So it's a little bit different than the services that we were looking at. There's also a great program on your machine called msconfig. msconfig will give you a very simple way to see what's happening when your machine starts up. Let's run msconfig. We click Start and Run and type msconfig and hit Enter. What pops up is a system configuration utility that shows us that we want to do a normal startup, a diagnostic startup, or we can select exactly what we would like to start up. So if somebody's really complaining about startup problems, here's a nice place to start. Now you notice it has a system ini, a win ini, and a boot ini in here. Those are the system ini and win ini are for legacy purposes, and the boot ini is something that's used whenever you're starting your operating system and what it begins with during the startup process. So normally this is something you go into where you want to change the way Windows initializes. In fact, we added one in here, if you recall from a previous video, where we added on the /SOS function onto the end so we could see all of our drivers loaded whenever Windows started up. Notice that services are in here so we can see exactly what services are on our machine. Yet another way we can manage some of the services that we have. And then there's this great startup tab. Now I only have 4 things in my startup view, and this is coming from different sections of our registry. There's different run or load sections of the registry that we never see in our Windows front end, but msconfig makes these available to you. It tells you exactly where in the registry those settings came from and what commands are being run and what executables are being run from those commands. This is on my machine. Normally you see just a lot of these listed out because I'm loading all kinds of crazy things when I start my machine. And everybody's machine's a little bit different. msconfig will show you that startup information and take you right to where you need to go. There's also a great Tools tab here where you can start a number of these utilities that we talk about during this training course. So we can look at internet options, we can view our event viewer, we can look at system information, our system properties, all from this single view. So a very quick and easy way to start up these apps without actually knowing where they happen to be located on your hard drive or what menu selections you might have to go through. Ultimately, when we load our operating system, we're going to be running some applications. And each application is a little bit different. Some use more memory, some use more disk space, some run better if it has more memory or more disk space or a combination of those two. You really have to look at the documentation for the application to know what does it need from a resource perspective. Now we can look online on some of the forums, ask other users that are online. We can go to that manufacturer's website. Maybe they have more information about what you can see. And you'll find very quickly that if you start learning how applications, especially popular applications, can be optimized, you can create an entire career around these things. There are database administrators in large organizations that all they do is make sure that the database runs. Sounds simple, doesn't it? But databases are extremely complex, and the optimization of those databases is a science unto itself. So as you learn more about the way applications work, you may find that this wealth of knowledge that you've created becomes very, very valuable to you. And you can start using some of that information to help organizations or corporations run their systems more effectively and more efficiently just because you've learned how to optimize the application. In review, we've gone through quite a bit in learning about how to look at the performance of our operating system with Task Manager and Performance Manager, but we've also talked about some ways to optimize our operating system, some best practices in using memory, hard drives, temporary files, services, using our disk, applications, and some of the startup features inside of our Windows environment. For more A+ videos, to participate in our message boards, or to look and see what we've got on our wiki, maybe add some more information yourself, you can visit our website, freeaplus.com.